Greetings, students. I hope you're doing well at whatever time or place you find yourself to be in as you're watching this. Today we're going to begin a new section of the course and think about what is called categorical logic. And in doing that, we're going to go back to Aristotle, who was a student of Plato, who was a student of Socrates, right? And here's the man himself, Aristoteles. Now, Aristotle wrote the first textbook on logic in the 4th century BCE, which he called the Organon. Remember from a previous lecture that an organon means something like a set of tools, right, or implements for doing things, right? So logic can be viewed as the tools of thought, the equipment for thought, the principles that can be used to organize our thinking. But Aristotle did more than develop logical tools. He invented a whole way of approach that defines any way that logic is done, that defines any kind of logical procedure, whether we use his particular set of tools or not. And we can think about what Aristotle did and what he was trying to do as thinking about thinking. So in his excellent introduction to logic, Paul Herrick writes, "It is easy to imagine Aristotle as a young student at Plato's academy, studying and debating the many arguments and counter-arguments of the Greek philosophers, favoring one theory one day, another theory the next, as college students often do when they're making up their minds about fundamental issues. It was probably while he was studying this exciting dialectic of argument and counter-argument that Aristotle first got the seed for a new academic subject that would one day be called logic, devoted to the systematic study of the standards of reasoning itself. Not reasoning about some specific subject matter, just reasoning itself. This would be a meta-level subject, one aimed ultimately at discovering the general principles of good or correct reasoning that govern all logical inferences, no matter what specific subject matter they are applied to." So as Michael Schinnefeld and Heidi White put it, so far as the historical record goes, all studies of deductive logic, meaning all study of logical necessity as a relation between propositions, derive from Aristotle alone. Of course, various ancient peoples studied argumentation, debate, reasoning, controversy, disputation, refutation, and deliberation. But these studies always mix logical force with rhetorical force. Only Aristotle made logical force a subject of study in isolation from other features. Other thinkers also studied the difference between genuine knowledge and mere belief, but this too is different from studying validity. An argument can be valid even if none of its premises count as genuine knowledge, and an invalid argument can have genuinely known elements. Knowledge and validity are different subjects. In sum, then, every study of validity we have comes from Aristotle or from his readers, or from his readers' readers. And this includes later Greeks, later Romans, early medieval Arabs, 12th century Europeans, and students of modern symbolic logic and computer programming around the world. So, any goal that anyone pursues in logic is governed by Aristotle's approach. He was the first one to explicitly identify and examine the heart of all logic, the idea of formal validity, which we have discussed already. We have modified what Aristotle said, extended it into places he never dreamed of, and done things with it he never investigated at all. But at the heart of it is the idea of looking at the form of arguments in terms of their validity. Now, to get a sense for Aristotle's logic, it's helpful to think about Aristotle's philosophy. Aristotle thought that what was most real about the world was that it was made up of things, beings, or as he sometimes liked to call them, substances. And a thing or a being, like a human, a horse, a tree, and so forth, had an essence or essential reality about it that made it just the type of thing that it was. There is what makes a tree, a dog, and beyond that, there is what makes a tree an evergreen, and a dog a mammal. And then there is what makes an evergreen a type of plant, and a mammal a type of animal, and both plants and trees types of living things, and so forth. So reality is made up of beings or things which have certain properties that we find to exist in certain relationships. And to think about these things is to divide them up into categories of things that we can speak about in certain ways that reflect their reality, their categorical reality. He thought that we can understand the way the world really is by recognizing the real categories that the world is divided up into and how they are related to each other. All thinking is then organized under these universals or categories, and categorical logic studies arguments that are made up of categorical propositions which make claims about things in the world. For example, the claim that all hobbits are lovers of second breakfast, as we all know. Now, in this statement, all hobbits are lovers of second breakfast, a claim is made about the relationship that exists between hobbits and lovers of second breakfast. It claims that all members of the category hobbit are included in the category of second breakfast lovers. Now, these statements, such as all hobbits are lovers of second breakfast, could then become the building blocks of categorical arguments, what he called syllogisms, such as the one I have for you here. All lovers of second breakfast are sensible creatures. All hobbits are lovers of second breakfast. Therefore, all hobbits are sensible creatures. Now, Aristotle's move at this point that made him so singular was to see that what was important in all this was the form of the argument, that what was important about it did not depend on what we were talking about, but how we were talking about it. For example, our argument here has a certain form, which we can learn how to diagram, which means that any argument which has the same form would be a valid one, right? And here we can think of these as our variables, right? You can put anything you want into the blank spaces as long as you put the same things. All dogs are mammals. All whales are mammals. All orcas are whales, so all orcas are mammals, or whatever we wanted, because what's important is the form of the argument. With the tool of the system of logic in hand, Aristotle thought he'd discovered the key to all of human reasoning, and the key to being able to determine whether when we reasoned, we did it in a valid way or not. And while it turned out that Aristotle was wrong in thinking he'd discovered all the ways we can think about things, he did discover many of the ways we do. And how he thought about it, in terms of logical form and validity, has remained the real core of logic, no matter how far it's developed beyond what he thought of. So in studying Aristotle, we are studying the roots of logic itself. And in mastering his little system of thought with the syllogisms, we are mastering one real part of how we can really think about ourselves in the world and how we find ourselves to be in it. So in our next episode, same bad time, same bad channel, I'll tell you more about the basics of how Aristotle approached thinking about thinking. Thank you for your kind attention.